Let me start by saying this. Kindness is not the problem. Being friendly isn't the issue. What is a problem is giving yourself away so freely that you forget you're valuable. When we confuse friendliness with being boundaryless, we lose ourselves, slowly, silently, and with a smile on our face. We live in a culture that glamorizes being liked. Be the nice one. Be the one who always shows up. Be the one who never says no. Be the one who picks up the phone on the first ring. And then we wonder why we feel used, invisible, or quietly resentful. We need to get one thing straight: being friendly, being kind, being open hearted. None of those are weaknesses, they're strengths. They require courage. They ask you to show up in a world that can be harsh and guarded and say, I will still choose warmth. I will still choose connection. That's not weak. That's a kind of quiet bravery most people underestimate. But here's where we get into trouble: when we confuse friendliness with self-abandonment, when we think being nice means being endlessly available, endlessly accommodating, endlessly forgiving, even when it hurts. Even when it costs us our peace, our time, our dignity. That's not friendship. That's not connection. That's survival mode dressed up as generosity. Lack of boundaries is not kindness. It's fear, fear of being disliked. Fear of disappointing others, fear of being alone, so we keep saying yes when we mean no. We keep laughing things off that actually stung. We keep showing up when our soul is telling us, you don't belong here anymore. And what happens when we live like that? We begin to resent the people we're trying to please. We start to shrink in spaces where we used to shine. We lose the sense that our voice matters, that our needs matter. Here's the truth, people. Pleasing is a boundary problem. It's not about being too nice. It's about not knowing where you end and others begin. Being friendly with boundaries is powerful. It says, I care about you, but I also care about me. It says, I'm here for you, but I'm not going to abandon myself to do it. And that kind of clarity, that kind of self-respect, that builds real trust, real connection, real love, because boundaries don't push people away. They show people how to love us well. So no, friendliness is not the issue. You can be soft, you can be warm, you can be welcoming. But let that friendliness come from a place of groundedness, not from fear. Let it be a gift, not a sacrifice, because the strongest people I know, they're kind, but they know where they stand, they give, but they don't overextend. They love, but they don't disappear, and that's not weakness. That's wisdom. Let's talk about over-availability. It often starts with good intentions. You want to be there for people. You want to be dependable, supportive, the one who shows up. And that's beautiful until it becomes the very thing that erodes how people see you. We don't like to admit it, but humans are wired to assign value based on scarcity and effort. When something or someone is constantly accessible, constantly saying yes, constantly within reach, it stops feeling special. It stops feeling intentional. It becomes expected, routine, easy to overlook. And here's the irony: the more you offer yourself without pause, without limits, without invitation, the more invisible you can become. Overavailability can be like background noise, always present but rarely truly heard. It doesn't mean you're not important. It doesn't mean you're not worthy. But it does mean that others stop recognizing the significance of your presence because they've never had to earn it, respect it, or wonder if they're misusing it. It's not that you should be withholding or cold. That's not the answer, but your time, energy, and emotional bandwidth are limited. And when you give them away freely to everyone, all the time, you unintentionally send the message that your presence costs nothing. And here's the thing about what costs nothing: people don't usually take care of it. They don't handle it with reverence. They don't feel the need to protect or prioritize it. Let me be clear. This doesn't mean your worth is tied to how people treat you. Your worth is intrinsic, it's non-negotiable, but the way you manage access to yourself influences how people experience that worth. Sometimes it's the pause that gives power to your presence. Sometimes the fact that you don't always say yes is what makes your yes meaningful. Sometimes taking a step back lets others realize what they've been taking for granted. If you're always the first to respond, the first to offer help, the one who never needs time, space, or support, you may be building a version of yourself that looks generous on the outside, but quietly empties you out on the inside. You are allowed to be less available. You are allowed to wait before replying. You are allowed to have sacred time, private energy, and unshared thoughts. In fact, the healthiest relationships are built not on constant contact, but on mutual respect, the kind that says, I value you enough to not expect everything from you. I value you enough to not drain you. When you stop making yourself endlessly accessible, people either learn to respect your space or reveal that they never really valued your presence in the first place. Either way, you get clarity, and clarity is a gift. So no, you don't have to pull away out of spite. You pull away out of wisdom, out of self-trust, out of a desire to be experienced as someone who matters, not someone who is just there, because you're not background noise. You're a symphony, and not everyone deserves front row seats. We live in a world where always on has become the norm. Texts are expected to be answered in minutes. Messages left on read stir up anxiety. Social media gives people a false sense of intimacy. Like because they can see you, they somehow know you. And because they know you, they think they have access to you constantly. But here's the thing, access does not equal connection. Being reachable at all times isn't a badge of honor. It's not proof of closeness or commitment. In fact, connection isn't about frequency. It's about quality. It's about showing up with respect, with intention, with presence. You can talk to someone every single day and still feel lonely in the relationship. You can respond to every text and still feel unseen. You can be available 24/7 and still be misunderstood. Because true connection, deep human connection, can't survive in a space where one person is always pouring and the other is always receiving. It can't grow where boundaries are violated in the name of closeness. It withers when respect is replaced by expectation. Let me say this plainly, being constantly available is not sustainable, not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually, and if someone only feels connected to you when they can have you whenever they want. That's not connection, that's control. Mutual respect says, I see you not just as someone who can help or respond or be there for me, but as someone with your own needs, your own life, your own sacred limits. Mutual respect honors the person, not just the presence. And here's where it gets even more honest. Sometimes we overgive access because we're afraid that if we're not always there, we'll lose the relationship. Afraid that setting boundaries will make us look distant or selfish. So we stretch ourselves thin, we answer when we're tired, we show up when we're depleted, we make ourselves small just to keep the connection alive, but that kind of connection, it's not rooted in love. It's rooted in fear, and anything built on fear won't last. The best connections in life are not the ones where you're glued to each other. They're the ones where space is respected, boundaries are honored, and time apart strengthens trust instead of creating tension. Where someone says, take your time, and they mean it. Where you can say, I need a moment, and it doesn't spark guilt or panic. Connection is strongest when both people feel safe to be their full selves, not just their most available selves. So if you've been thinking that the only way to maintain connection is to constantly give, constantly reply, constantly be on, let this be your permission to stop, step back, breathe. The people who truly respect you will not be threatened by your boundaries. In fact, they'll lean in more deeply because of them, because connection doesn't mean constant access. It means consistent care. And the difference between those two is where real relationships are born. We're taught early, explicitly and implicitly, that yes is good, yes is polite, yes is kind. We're told that being helpful, agreeable, accommodating makes us likable, and that being liked means we belong. So we start handing out yesies like candy. Yes, I'll help. Yes, I'll come. Yes, I'll do it, even though I'm tired, even though I'm drowning, even though a voice inside me is quietly whispering, you don't have the capacity for this. But here's the truth that many of us only learn the hard way. A yes that costs your well-being isn't kindness, it's self-betrayal. And that's why saying no can be the most loving thing you do, because no isn't rejection. It isn't cruelty, it isn't selfishness. When said from a place of truth and self-awareness, no is actually one of the deepest forms of honesty and love you can offer, not just to others, but to yourself. Think about it. When you say yes out of guilt, fear, or obligation, you may give someone your time. But what are they really getting? A drained version of you, a distracted version, a resentful version. That's not love. That's survival. And over time, those kinds of yeses build relationships rooted in performance, not authenticity. But when you say no, because you've checked in with yourself and realized you don't have the emotional space, the energy, the alignment, that no becomes a form of respect. It says, I care about this relationship enough not to lie. I value our connection enough not to show up half-heartedly. I respect myself enough not to abandon my own needs just to be accepted. It's not easy, especially if you're a recovering people pleaser. Saying no might come with shaking hands and a racing heart. You might worry about disappointing someone. You might feel guilty, like you're letting people down. But here's what you're really doing. You're modeling what it means to be whole. You're giving others permission to listen to their own needs. You're building trust that isn't dependent on your constant sacrifice. Some of the strongest relationships are held together by the kind of honesty that only a whelp-laced no can deliver. No, I can't do that right now. No, I need space. No, that doesn't feel right to me. And if someone truly loves you, truly sees you, they'll respect your no. They'll adapt. They'll stay. If they don't, that no may have protected you from a dynamic that was never rooted in mutual care to begin with. So let's rewrite the narrative. No isn't the end of connection. Sometimes no is what makes room for a more honest, healthier connection to begin, because every time you say no to something that depletes you, you're saying yes to something deeper, your peace, your clarity, your truth. And that, my friend, is love in its most courageous form. We live in a world where convenience is often mistaken for value. The more accessible something is, the more it's expected. And when things come too easily, whether it's time, attention, or love, it's easy for people to forget just how precious that thing truly is. People respect what requires intention to access. Think about it, the most valuable things in life, whether it's a meaningful relationship, a piece of art, or a once in a lifetime experience, don't come with a download now button. They require effort, patience, investment. Yet so often we forget this when it comes to ourselves. When you are always available, when your energy, your time, your heart are endlessly open and accessible, it can make you seem like a constant resource. Something that's there, just waiting to be used. And while that may feel good in the moment, it also means you stop being seen for the richness that you are. People don't respect what they can take without effort. They don't value what comes with no thought, no waiting, no challenge. And here's where it gets tricky. It's not that people are trying to be disrespectful. It's just that we, as humans, can easily take something for granted when it's handed to us freely. When it doesn't cost us anything to reach for it, we stop thinking about its true worth. Now, I want to be clear. This doesn't mean you have to be distant or cold. It doesn't mean you should create walls just for the sake of it. The goal is to shift from being over-available to being intentionally accessible. There's a big difference between giving someone space and making them work for your presence. One is about creating emotional distance. The other is about cultivating a relationship where both people show up with intention and mutual respect. When you set boundaries, whether it's saying no to a request, taking time for yourself, or choosing when and how you show up, you are teaching people to value your presence. You're saying, my time, my energy, my attention, those are precious. If you want them, I need to know it matters to you. And that's where the magic happens. Because when people understand that your presence is not freely given, they begin to treasure it. They begin to show up with a sense of purpose, with more mindfulness, more respect. Think about any relationship where the connection is deep and meaningful. You don't just show up because it's easy. You show up because you've both made the choice to invest. You've both said, this matters, this is worth the effort. Whether it's a friend, a partner, or a colleague, the relationships that thrive are the ones where both parties bring intention, where both are mindful of what it takes to maintain the connection. It's not just about being there, it's about how you show up and why you choose to show up. Access with intention creates respect. You don't have to be hard to get or play games, but you can create a healthy distance that demands respect for your time, your energy, and your heart. This is where vulnerability can thrive. When someone knows they have to earn your trust, your time, your love, it's not a challenge, it's an invitation. It invites them to show up fully, to be present with you in a way that is earned, not taken for granted. Think about your favorite things, the things that are rare, the things that are precious. Do they come easily? Do they demand no effort? Or do they require you to show up, to wait, to invest in order to truly appreciate them? It's the same with your presence, your attention, your love. When you require intention to access yourself, whether it's your emotional energy or your physical time, you teach people how to treat you. You teach them to show up as their best selves because your best self is not easily given away. You teach them that your time, your care, your presence is sacred, and that, my friends, is the foundation for respect. So here's the question: what do you want people to see when they think of you? Someone who's always there, always available, always ready to give, or someone who is intentionally present, with boundaries that keep them grounded in their worth and strength? Because when you create space for people to appreciate what's not always easily accessible, you invite them to truly respect who you are and what you bring into the world. Vulnerability is one of the most powerful forces we have. It is the birthplace of creativity, courage, love, and connection. It's where we reveal ourselves, our fears, our hopes, our deepest truths, and in doing so, we invite others to do the same. But here's something we often forget: vulnerability is not a free pass. It's not something we should give away indiscriminately simply because someone asks for it or because we want to be liked or accepted. The truth is, vulnerability is precious. It's a gift that takes immense courage to offer, and it deserves to be given only in spaces where it's safe, where it's reciprocated, and where it can foster true connection, not just create opportunities for exploitation or disappointment. We live in a world that often pressures us to show up authentically, to be ourselves, to put it all out there, no filters, no walls, just raw honesty. But vulnerability is not the same as oversharing. It's not about putting your heart on display for anyone who will listen, or giving away pieces of your soul simply because you feel like it. It's about choosing when and where you show up with intention, about deciding who has earned the right to see you at your most open and exposed. Vulnerability is earned. It's something that should be shared with people who have demonstrated trustworthiness, empathy, and respect for the sacredness of your emotions. It's something that grows and deepens over time, not something you offer on a whim just because you want to be seen. We often confuse vulnerability with the need to be liked or accepted. We think, if I let people see who I truly am, maybe they'll like me more. Maybe I'll feel more connected. Maybe I'll feel less alone. But the truth is, vulnerability, if given to the wrong people or in the wrong circumstances, can backfire. When we share our most intimate fears, our deepest insecurities, or our greatest dreams with someone who doesn't respect the sacredness of that vulnerability, We don't just lose a part of ourselves, we lose trust, trust in others and trust in ourselves. Here's the painful part. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. Not everyone has earned the right to hold the delicate parts of you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that people are bad or that they don't care. It simply means that vulnerability requires mutual respect, and not everyone is capable of offering that respect. When we give away our vulnerability too freely, too quickly, we often find ourselves exposed in ways we never intended, feeling misunderstood, rejected, or even betrayed. Vulnerability, when shared too widely, can leave us feeling raw and unprotected, and that sense of openness can be mistaken for weakness instead of strength. Vulnerability is meant to be a bridge, not a burden. It's meant to invite deeper connection, not leave us open to harm. It's meant to cultivate trust, not erode it. And because of that, we must treat it as something that needs to be nurtured, protected, and given only in spaces that are safe and capable of holding it. So, how do we know when someone has earned the right to our vulnerability? We know because we've seen them show up. We know because they've proven time and again that they can handle the weight of our emotions without judgment or manipulation. We know because they respect our boundaries and they show empathy and care, not just when it's convenient, but when it counts. We know because they've shown us, through their actions, that they value us as we are not just for what we can offer them. We know because they've earned our trust through consistent behavior, through being there when it matters, through showing patience, kindness, and understanding. The key to vulnerability is not to hide it away out of fear, but to recognize that it's a privilege to be trusted with someone else's soul. And just as you wouldn't hand over the most delicate, fragile part of your life to someone who isn't worthy of it, you shouldn't give away your vulnerability to those who haven't proven they can handle it with care. Vulnerability is a gift, and like any gift, it's best shared with those who can receive it with open hands, without expectation or entitlement. The more you practice discernment around when, how, and with whom you are vulnerable, the deeper your connections will be. You'll find that when you share yourself with people who have truly earned it, those bonds are rooted in something far stronger than simple proximity or convenience. When vulnerability is shared with intention, when it is given with respect and returned with empathy, it fosters the deepest kind of connection we can experience. But when it's handed out indiscriminately, it can leave us feeling exposed and at times even broken. The ultimate act of love and self-respect is recognizing that your vulnerability is not for everyone. It's for the people who show up with their hearts open, their minds willing, and their integrity intact. And when we reserve our vulnerability for these people, we create relationships built on mutual trust, respect, and a profound understanding of each other's humanity. So as you navigate your relationships, remember, vulnerability is earned. And those who honor it, cherish it. They don't exploit it, and they'll hold it with the care it deserves. At the heart of every relationship, every interaction, every connection, there is one fundamental truth. The way we value ourselves shapes the way others value us. Self-worth is not just a quiet internal monologue. It is the loudest statement we make about who we are and how we deserve to be treated. It sets the tone for everything that follows. We've all heard it before. You can't expect others to value you if you don't value yourself. And while it may sound like a cliche, the truth behind that statement is profound. How you see yourself will dictate how others perceive you, and more importantly, how they interact with you. Here's the thing about self-worth. It's not the same as arrogance, pride, or narcissism. Self-worth is about recognizing your inherent value, not because of what you do, how much you give, or how others perceive you, but because you are inherently worthy of love, respect, and kindness simply because you exist. You are not defined by your mistakes, your flaws, or your achievements. You are defined by the simple fact that you are human, and that in itself is enough. When you walk into a room with an understanding of your worth, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to seek validation or stretch yourself thin to gain approval. You simply are. You stand in your truth unapologetically, and when you do that, the energy shifts. The people around you pick up on it. They can feel the boundaries you set, the respect you have for yourself, and the way you carry yourself with quiet confidence. Self-worth is not about thinking you're better than anyone else. It's about knowing that you are no less than anyone else. It's about understanding that you are deserving of respect, kindness, and care, regardless of your status, appearance, or the roles you play in other people's lives. It's about having the courage to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, and to demand the treatment you deserve, because you know, deep down, that you are worthy of it. The people around you will always treat you in accordance with how you treat yourself. If you allow others to push your boundaries, if you constantly put your needs aside for theirs, if you consistently deny your own worth by accepting treatment that doesn't align with who you truly are, you're setting the stage for disrespect. You're teaching others that your value is fluid, that you can be molded, manipulated, or walked over. You may not be doing it consciously, but every time you tolerate mistreatment, you're sending a message that your needs and your well-being aren't as important as others. But here's the powerful shift. When you begin to honor yourself, when you begin to see your worth as non-negotiable, people will treat you differently. They will begin to recognize the standard you set. They will understand that your time, your energy, and your presence are valuable. They will see that you have set a tone that says, I will not tolerate being treated with anything less than respect, love, and care. That doesn't mean you have to be rigid or uncompromising. It means that you ask for what you need and you're willing to walk away from situations or relationships that don't align with your values. It means that you're not afraid to speak up when something isn't right or to set boundaries that protect your emotional well-being. It means you stop seeking permission for your worth and start claiming it as your own. Now, it's important to remember, setting the tone for how others treat you isn't about controlling or manipulating others. It's about self-leadership. It's about showing up in your life with a deep understanding that you are worthy of the best that life has to offer. And in doing so, you inspire others to show up for you in the same way. This process requires vulnerability, but it also requires strength. Strength to stand firm in your value, even when others might try to challenge it. It requires the courage to say, I deserve better, when you're being treated in ways that don't reflect your worth. It means you no longer wait for someone to treat you the way you want to be treated. Instead, you show people by your actions and your words how you expect to be treated. You let your life be an example of what it means to value oneself unapologetically. You'll begin to notice that as your self-worth grows, so too does the way others treat you. The toxic relationships that once drained you will start to fall away because they no longer have the power to take from you. The friendships, partnerships, and connections that remain will be grounded in mutual respect and shared value. People will show up for you in ways that honor your worth because you have shown them what it looks like to honor it first. But perhaps the most powerful shift happens internally. When you start to set the tone for how others treat you, you begin to treat yourself with more care, love, and respect. You stop doubting your worth. You stop looking for external validation to fill the spaces that only you can fill. You realize that you are enough just as you are, and that is a life-changing revelation. Ultimately, the energy you bring into the world rooted in your self-worth will draw others to you who recognize and honor that energy. You will begin to attract the people who are aligned with your values, who celebrate you, and who support you in becoming the best version of yourself. Because self-worth is not just a feeling, it's a boundary, it's a foundation. And when you set the tone for how others treat you, you are building a life that reflects the truth of who you are. A life where you are seen, respected, and loved in all the ways you have always deserved. Here's a powerful, reflective conclusion that ties together the entire speech in the grounded, emotionally honest style you've been using. So here we are standing in the tension between kindness and boundaries, between connection and over-availability, between openness and self-respect. And the truth is, it's not easy to walk this line, especially for those of us who were raised to be nice, to keep the peace, to always be accessible, agreeable, and available. But here's what we're reclaiming today: our right to be kind without being consumed, to be open, hearted without being wide open, to be generous without being taken for granted. We are no longer sacrificing our peace to please people who don't respect what's freely given. We are no longer mistaking friendliness for connection or availability for value. We are choosing to lead with courage, not by hardening ourselves, but by standing tall in our worth. We are learning that boundaries don't push people away, they protect what's sacred. That vulnerability is not a performance, it's a gift. That saying no is often the most honest and loving thing we can do. That self-worth isn't loud, but it is unwavering. Let this be the moment you stop asking others to validate what you already know in your bones. You are worthy. Worthy of respect, worthy of intention, worthy of love that doesn't have to be chased, begged for, or earned by overgiving. Because when you start treating yourself like someone who matters, the world begins to follow suit. And that is where real, grounded connection begins. Not in being constantly available, but in being authentically, intentionally you. Let them learn that your presence is not promised, it's earned, and that your kindness is deep, but it's no longer confused with permission to be treated carelessly. You don't have to stop being warm or generous or friendly. You just have to stop being available in ways that cost you your self-respect. Because at the end of the day, people don't respect what they can reach without effort. And you, my friend, are worth the effort.